Lauren and Simon taking you through the last half hour of breaking and entering, and we're about to play you after this track an interview we conducted last night before her show at 170 Russel with Canadian electronic producer Grimes. I hope you can stick around and get to know a bit more about Claire Boucher, who is behind Grimes and her brand new album called Art Angels. Let's revisit this one though from her record from back in 2012, Visions, to get us there. This one's called Genesis. From a great record called Visions from back in 2012 from Canadian electronic producer Grimes, who played last night here in Melbourne and Laneway Festival. Next Saturday, Genesis, the name of the track. And we caught up last night with Claire Boucher, who is behind Grimes. Last spoke to her back in 2012 around the release of her Visions album, and at that point Claire was still living in Montreal, but has since moved to LA and put out a brand new record, Simon, called Art Angels.
Yeah, it's a fascinating release, certainly widely acclaimed, but also something of a polarising release. It's interesting to follow Claire Boucher's career from her first two LPs, 2010's Guidey Primes and How Facts are very experimental, sort of lo-fi noise pieces in some ways, with some indecipherable vocals over fragmented beats and very ambient layering of sounds, then through to, of course, Visions, which you just mentioned, which kind of developed some of those into more fully formed, recognisable pop compositions, but really very atmospheric in nature. And then with Art Angels, much more narrative-driven songs with a kind of more maximalist production approach, drawing on sort of rock, baroque, electronic, country sounds. Quite a fascinating amalgam.
Yeah, last night it was really fun to get to catch up again with Grimes backstage before her show at 170 Russel. We're all snuggled up very closely on a couch together, and we kicked off our chat by discussing a recent interview with Grimes in Flair, which alluded to what could potentially be the end of Grimes. And we started by asking Claire, is there a sense that with the new album Art Angels that the identity of Grimes and her relationship with and to Grimes has changed forever?
No, I think I just really hate the press sometimes, and I sometimes say immature things in interviews, or often say immature things in interviews, which has led to my unfortunate relationship with the press. It's a vicious cycle.
Okay. Well, I guess obviously Art Angels is the name of the record, and also sort of some of the characters that are involved in the record. Can you describe a little bit about how those figures, those Art Angels, developed as characters?
That's also a situation where an interview I did early on, like, really kind of took it out of context. I'm not trying to, like, be like, oh, I have alter egos. Sorry, I feel like I'm, like, screwing up all your questions. I don't know. I'm not trying to, like, you know, do, like, a meme thing or anything. But, I don't know. I think I was just trying to explain my writing process, that sometimes it's easier to, like, pretend you're someone else when you're writing a song or something, you know, write from different perspectives, because it's a little, you know, you can distance yourself from what you're saying a little more and, I don't know, be a bit more experimental.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Was there kind of a shift maybe in the extent to which you were kind of exploring those, you know, sort of narrative scenarios when you were writing this record?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think my first 3 records, I really had this, I don't know where I got the idea, but I was like, oh, you have to, it has to be so personal. It has to be really, you know, like, from you. And so, I'd always be like, oh, I'd love to make a song like that, but I feel like everyone would think it was disingenuous. And I had this weird, like, all these weird hang-ups about songwriting where I felt like I had to, you know, stick to one kind of thing. But then, like, one of my best friends actually does a lot of writing sessions for other artists, and I don't know, I just, like, tried a few things with him, like, writing for other artists, and it was really, really fun to just pretend I was someone else. And then so I just started doing it a lot, and it really kind of opened up my brain.
And a lot of the songs on this new record came from jamming, you said. As an electronic artist, can you elaborate on how you did that?
I guess so Fender very nicely gave me a Eddie Van Halen amp, and I turn it on and I mess around with the settings, and then I may or may not smoke some pot, and then, like, I just press record and I just go for, like, a really long time, and then it's not, like, totally like jamming, because I'll go back and I'll sample myself. So, like, a lot of these songs are samples of stuff that I did, and I'll sort of, like, cut it into a piece, like, chop it up, like, make it into something, and sort of, it's implemented electronically, but it's from, like, a more organic quote-unquote jam session or whatever.
I guess on that subject, though, of the kind of the production side of things, like it feels like there is maybe a different approach that you were taking potentially on this record, maybe compared to some of the earlier albums. Would you be able to describe some of the ideas, maybe on a production level, that you were kind of keen to explore here?
Well, there's definitely, like a song like California is one of the first songs where I actually wrote out a song on the guitar and then kind of recorded it afterwards, which I've never done before. And Belly the Beat too. Like I've never been like composing lyrics and like here's the pre-chorus, here's the chorus, that kind of thing, and then sort of working backwards and filling it in. Like, so that was like really interesting for me. I think it really changed my songwriting process. And then just doing a lot more recording and engineering, like like live micing guitars and stuff like that. Like, I guess I'd never done it before.
You mentioned the idea of getting lost when making Art Angels, and that you hope listeners would also get lost in the record as well. On a personal level, what did that feel like for you?
I mean, I think I'm always kind of like that, but I think it's just more, it's like the jamming thing. Like, I think I was saying it in relation to people being like, oh, Grimes wants to write a top 40 record, and I'm like, I can't really do that. Like, for me, it's not a very cerebral process. Like, it's really, I zone out, I jam out. Half the time, I don't really even remember what I did. Like, I just kind of, like, screw around and, like, if it's a really great song, you totally just, I don't know, you're just tinkering with it, and then it just sort of develops. Versus the idea of, like, being like, okay, I'm going to make, like, 135 BPM, like, mega hit, like, with sawtooth synths, and the lyrics will be about this. Like, I find that really difficult.
How did the process of, I guess, creating Visions compare to creating Art Angels? Was there much different?
Yeah, I think they're pretty different, especially because Visions, my manager had actually secured a release date before I had written the record. And so he's like, yeah, your album has to come out this day. I was like, what? So I had to make it really, really fast. And I'd say it was pretty unhealthy experience, just in the sense that I was, doing lots of drugs and just, like, avoiding everyone and stuff. And also, I'd say Visions is really, like, explicitly not a lyrical record. Like, a couple songs are, but it's pretty, I don't know, it's more of a vibey thing, whereas this record was really thoughtful. I really made a ton of songs and then just kind of worked backwards, picking my favorites, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Do you enjoy, like, having a lot of time to play with, or is it better to have sort of externally imposed deadlines?
I think it's definitely better to have more time. I don't know, because then you can just make something really good. Like, because I feel like with Visions, it's not like that there's filler, but there's so much just sort of like, here's a random idea. And I even, like, I go back and listen, I'm like, like the song 8, everyone's like, I wish 8 was longer. And I'm like, yeah, I do too. I wish I'd had the time to make that into a proper song, or, or like write lyrics to Genesis or something. Everyone's like, what are the lyrics to your single? I'm like, I don't know. It's the demo vocal.
Graham, so much music is made and released, and some of it sounds familiar and some of it sounds strange. And you've talked about enjoying music that makes you feel uncomfortable so the first time you hear it. How often does this happen for you?
I don't know. I guess sort of often. I don't know. I don't know how often it happens.
When was the last time it happened?
Maybe, I think, like, Kimbra put out a single that was, like, it's called 90s Music, and the first time I listened to it, I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, and then I just immediately listened to it again, and then again, and again, and again, and then I was like, oh, I've listened to this 20 times, I definitely love this track. But it totally, like weirded me out the first time I heard it.
How difficult is it to find something, and also, I guess, to make something that's genuinely surprising?
I don't know. I find it's easy to make, but I also hate my own voice. Well, okay, no, I have to stop saying I hate things, because that's always a headline. I am really weirded out by hearing myself sing, so that's always a very jarring process.
On Triple R, the sounds of Grimes from her latest record, Art Angels. Listen to the track Flesh Without Blood on Triple R with Lauren and Simon on Breaking and Entering. We're about to jump into part 2 of the interview that we had last night backstage with Grimes at 170 Russel.
The response to your own record, Art Angels, has been so powerful. Like, for example, a journalist and writer that we really admire, Jessica Hopper of Pitchfork, made some observations And to quote, here Grimes closes the gap between the pop she's idolized and the pop she is capable of, and Grimes is a human zeitgeist, redrawing all the binaries and boundaries of which we define pop music and forcing us to come along, which are, incredible statements. It's probably hard for you to sort of like comment on those, but do you have any feelings or sort of responses to those statements,
I actually really disagree with those statements. I did a lot of press leading up to this record talking about how I didn't want to make a pop record. I was kind of trying to make a guitar record. People like Nine Inch Nails and Radiohead, they have hooks, they have upfront vocals. But, if you listen to songs like Scream and Butterfly and stuff, they're really experimental in my opinion. They just have hooks and clean vocals, which I just didn't have before because I didn't have the resources to, get a good mic or something. But I think the degree to which people just have been consistently claiming that I idolize pop music and I want to be a pop musician, it's distinctly the opposite of anything I've ever said. And it seems weirdly, I just don't, I'm very confused by it. I think maybe even California would be the most pop song, but it's like a dance hall country song. I've never heard a song like it. I really don't think it's, it wasn't what I was going for. It wasn't what I intended. And I think a lot of people, especially journalists, made a lot of assumptions when the record came out. Because, a lot of these reviews came up the same day I put the record out. I'm like, there's no way you listen to it, Yeah.
I guess on a lighter note, what have been some of the biggest changes on a personal and professional level for you since moving to Los Angeles?
It's kind of the same. I guess I try to take more vitamin D. I mostly moved to Los Angeles because all my friends moved there, so it's kind of just the same. I have a car now, but I actually didn't want a car. Everyone made me get a car. I'm against the cars. It's a hybrid.
On tour, I guess, obviously you mentioned before about having a hybrid car in Los Angeles, but sort of, how do you say, ecological footprints is something that's kind of a major concern for you as you tour the world as well. Can you talk a little bit about some of your strategies there?
Some of my strategies?
Yeah.
Well, we try to really limit the tour crew and tour super sustainably. Our production, it can actually all fit into a single duffel bag because it's just a bunch of army stuff, so it's actually pretty light, I think, compared to a lot of bands. And we try to rent lights locally and stuff like that. Just try to be responsible about it and encourage people to bring water bottles, stainless steel water bottles to the shows and fill them up here instead of, although some venues don't allow that, but instead of plastic and buying plastic here and stuff like that. It is difficult. I do feel bad about the flying. It's something I'll probably try to not tour this heavily after this year for sustainability reasons.
I wonder if holographic performances might become more of a standard, do you think, perhaps? Or the Oculus Rift, you could do performances in.
Yeah, actually, that would be a sick idea. Or just instead of coming back, they're just doing maybe every couple of years doing one big show and then just not doing the heavy rotation or whatever.
I was going to say, just finally, we wanted to ask you about...
but we have another thing that's really good. You can call ahead at hotels and request, only one towel in the room, because they have to wash everything after you go in the room and stuff like that, or, less pillows. That's always really good. Sorry. I feel like people don't know that. I always feel like you got to spread the word about the towel thing. Anyway, sorry.
I love it. It's great. I guess just finally we wanted to ask you about sort of the nature and philosophy behind Erie organisation and why you started that.
So in Canada we have a really good grant system. So a lot of Canadian artists, they just have almost superficially, but their own labels in Canada, just because they, you can get better grants. You're kind of feeding into the system. And so 4AD, I'm on 4AD worldwide, but I'm on Erie in Canada, which is, I guess, my label. But also, I kind of wanted to expand it just because I know just a lot of really great artists. My friend Nicole, we put out her record, Natural Born Losers, and honestly, I just have no interest in putting out records. I don't know how to do it. I'm if another label comes and they want to sign you, please leave my label. I'm a shitty label, but I just in the meantime, if no one else is gonna put out your record, I'll just put it out. That's not a very deep philosophy, but I don't know. It just seems better than her not having a label.
It's lovely. It's very supportive. Yeah.
Loving the sounds of She Devils.
Ooh, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good Canadian acts, yeah. I don't know, maybe you could play the song Butterfly. In my opinion, it should be the next single, but the next single is going to be California because the label thinks it makes more sense. But I think Butterfly is a better single. It's kind of a song from the perspective of a confused butterfly seeing airplanes and stuff and just being what the fuck? And, just like, having it, this sounds so ridiculous, the butterfly's habitat infringed upon by, humanity, I guess. And how that would be probably confusing to an animal who's not. I guess a butterfly technically I don't think has a central nervous system, so it also doesn't just make sense from a scientific perspective. But I don't know, if you were like a tiger, you'd just be like, what the hell?
From the new album from Grimes, it's called Art Angels. Track we're listening to called Butterfly. And before that, our chat with Grimes, the Canadian electronic producer who played last night here in Melbourne, and you can catch at Laneway next Saturday. It is time for us to get out of here. I want to thank our guests also, Shamir and Lion Babe as well. Stick around on Max Headroom this evening. Coming up, Adam Pont with a special on Roisin Murphy. Definitely worth sticking around between 7 and 8 tonight on Max Headroom. Next week, another big week for us too. We'll have some more acts dropping by. We'll have Beach House, Dive and Health as well joining us. But till then,